Okay, good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming out and joining us tonight. And I want to say Happy Earth Day. Today is April 22nd, and it marks the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. So again, Happy Earth Day. My name is Shelley Augustine. I am the co-interim director of the Yorkville Public Library. And again, thank you for coming out tonight. Tonight's program, we will be learning ways to save money and the environment through energy efficiency and better recycling. Our guest speaker tonight is Marta Keane. A little bit of background about Marta. She was trained by the state of Illinois in 1992 as a recycling coordinator. She received additional training with SWANA, I believe, as a solid waste manager in 1995. The Illinois Recycling Association Foundation offered materials management training in 2010 that she has taken, and then she became an energy ambassador in 2019 with training from the Illinois Green Alliance. So I believe it's safe to say that we have a highly trained expert speaker with us tonight, and I certainly look forward to hearing her speak. I just want to let you know that I am recording this program this evening, and I will share it on our YouTube page, the link for you to view again, or if you know anyone that was interested in this program and couldn't make it, you can share the link with them. I will send you an email tomorrow as well, and a program evaluation. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes out of your time to fill that out for us. It's a Google form, and return it, and let us know what you thought of the program and maybe what you might like to see come here at the Yorkville Public Library. So again, thank you for coming out tonight, and I will pass it on to Marta.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, and I will repeat Happy Earth Day because how often do we get to say that? Once a year. So I'm going to try to share my screen. And I know we're not a large group. If there is a question, we are suggesting putting it in the chat, but if you want to unmute, as long as we're not that big, I think that it won't be an issue for me. So with that, let me just do my share screen up here, wherever it went to. Hide from me. Share screen go. Here it is. All right. So thanks so much for coming out from your living rooms and enjoying our virtual 51st anniversary. We were trying to do this for the 50th, and of course we were all at the throes there of COVID at the time. So we're going to make up for lost time here. This presentation is going to kind of cover these subject matters. First, that climate change is real. We all can make a difference. Reducing energy consumption can be done at home, at work, and at play. We can make more intelligent purchasing decisions. We can start reusing more materials, and we can recycle, but we need to do it right. And eventually, we're going to move, if everything goes well, to a circular economy. We'll talk about what that is and how extended producer responsibility fits into that concept. So, do we have anyone that is actually attending this event on Earth Day that doesn't know that climate is changing at an accelerated pace due to the use of carbon-based fuels? By the way, this is a rhetorical question. Banks, some of the most conservative institutions on the planet, stopped loaning money to ski resorts in the Alps that were located below 1,500 meters back in the 1990s, right? We have multiple examples of things that the public works throughout the United States have been doing to deal with what is happening in the climate, including knowing that we're going to have larger rainfall events and building our stormwater sewer systems much wider than they used to be. And this isn't something that just happened a few years ago. This has been going on for 20 years. So just because some folks still want to say it's not existing, we all know it's real. And it's a threat here in the Midwest, not in the same way it is to coastal communities, but it is still a threat to us. So what can we do about it? And I guess the first thing is awareness. And 1970, the first Earth Day, marked a major awareness event. We were coming out of people learning about things happening to our ecosystems through Silent Spring, Rachel Carlson, and we learned that our national bird was going extinct due to pesticides. Lake Erie was on fire. Well, more exactly, the Cuyahoga River, which flows into Lake Erie because we were dumping all of our industrial chemicals into our rivers and streams. And here we are in the Fox River. We certainly know how beautiful it is. We want to look at it. But if you just go back to even the 1960s, houses were not built to face the river. A lot of times they had their backs on the river. It was just seen as a dumping grounds, and this was all over the United States, not just here. So thankfully, thanks to all of that attention, the Environmental Protection Agency was created in 1970. And since then, we have actually seen the bald eagles rebound, and we get to enjoy seeing them right here in Yorkville, flying along the river, which has been phenomenal. And I've been here 20 years, and I have to say that at one of my daughter's birthday parties, just a few years after we moved here, we saw one. I was talking to some father of one of the other little kids that was there, and I stopped him and said, "Look, there's a bald eagle." And he kind of glanced and he's like, "Oh, okay." And he started talking. He said, "No, look, there is a bald eagle flying over us." So now it's still exciting, but it's not the same as it was even then. We're starting to see them so frequently, and that is thanks to regulations that have resulted in job creations because companies have stepped up to provide hazardous waste disposal services. And other companies have actually reduced the use of their hazardous chemicals overall. So there is a voluntary reporting system. There's mandatory reporting systems depending on how much you use that the EPA has created. And that in and of itself has created an expense to companies, which have made them see that maybe it's better for their bottom line to avoid the use of some of these chemicals. So there is progress being made, and we, the people, are responsible for calling for those changes. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the energy that we use and where that energy comes from. So, if we're here because it's Earth Day, I'm going to imagine that you guys are all very environmentally minded and very aware of renewable energies such as solar and wind, and hydropower is considered a renewable resource, as is biofuels. Okay, these are all renewable resources. They're clean, and we can make more of them without taking anything away from the earth in the way of resources. Non-renewable resources would be more the coal and the gas and the oil. And nuclear, while it is clean burning, is still not considered a renewable resource. So right now there is a Clean Jobs Act. It's a CJA, I believe it's called, in the state legislature that they're supposed to be voting on. Part of it is to help our nuclear power industry here in Illinois, and part of it is to help our solar and our wind. So it's going to create more jobs, and hopefully it will help keep our nuclear power plants operational, because once they're done, it's kind of hard to disassemble them. They're fairly large. So we are seeing a transition away from coal. In Will County, where I work, we've had 2 coal power plants that have switched over to natural gas plants. So that is an alternative. So we want to try to reduce our energy consumption, knowing that it is coming from some of these non-renewable resources, which still make up the dominant amount of energy we get from the grid here in Illinois, especially in our area. And so we have to keep in mind that ComEd, does actually have a lot of programs to help us. And one of the things that they have done in recent years is install smart meters on all of our homes. Now, a smart meter is a digital electric meter that collects data on the energy that we're using, and it sends that information to the utility, which eliminates a job. We don't need to have a person come to our house anymore and read our electric meter. But at the same time, it also gives us the opportunity to take advantage of real-time pricing. So if you're somebody who can control when you're going to run your major appliances, this can actually add up to true savings. Okay. At nighttime, for the most part, through most of the year, and then there's other times during different parts of the year, energy use is so low that the amount that you're paying per kilowatt hour is down to like 1 or 2 cents. It's phenomenal. So if you have some kind of programmable way of operating your dishwasher, okay, in my case, I have a plug-in hybrid vehicle. I can remotely control that to turn on at 1 o'clock in the morning and have the car fully charged when I get up to use it. And so having that ability, running the dishwasher, if I don't have that on my dishwasher, as I go to bed, it might not be down to 1 cent a kilowatt hour, but it's still very low at that time, as opposed to running it at the height of the day. Okay, it's going to make a real difference. In the summertime, it's going to make a huge difference because, as we all know, we pay more in the summertime for electricity. So some of the other things that ComEd and NICOR offer are free home assessments. They will come to your home and they'll help show you what you can do to make your home more efficient. Okay. And I stress this is important because a lot of times we think, well, let's just go put some solar panels on our home. Before you go and get the solar panels, it's really good to try to reduce your energy load altogether. That means you don't have to buy as many solar panels often enough, and you can control that power. So switching to a programmable thermostat, right? If you're working, then during the day, your house can easily go down into the lower 60s, and your pets are still comfortable. And at nighttime, when you're under blankets and things like that, you also can have the thermostat lower. But then, of course, when you're up and about and you get up in the morning, you can have the thermostat kick on and, the programmable coffee maker going. You got it all happening right as you're getting up. So it works out really well. Switching to LED lights. Uh, that's kind of hard if you've switched over to CFLs and you're waiting for them to burn out. But once you do, you're really making even less electrical use and you're getting a brighter light. The LEDs have come down in price and they're not that that look that a lot of folks didn't like. They have more of a spectrum of color to them now. Okay, so switching to LEDs is a great way to go. Replacing your old appliances as they stop functioning and getting what is an Energy Star appliance. These are rated. They tell you how much power they're going to use. So make sure you're reading those labels. Okay. If you have advanced power strips, you can turn off multiple things at once. There is such a thing as a vampire load where it's actually using electricity even though you're not using anything that's plugged into it. So if you can plug things into a strip and then turn off the whole strip, then none of that power is getting used. And also the power strip protects against surges, usually a decent power strip. There are shower heads and faucet aerators. Now, some of these items might be given to you free if you do that home assessment. Okay, so I know I did one. They gave me some aerators, not a shower head, but the aerators. If you have a chance to switch that, that's really minor. Most folks can do that themselves. And really, you can get something that's labeled Water Sense, and it's going to tell you how many gallons of water it's going to use. Oftentimes, the old aerators, the first ones that came out, would reduce the flow and people felt like they weren't getting enough pressure. The newer ones, that's not the issue at all. They'll splash you. It's just, but very little amount of water is coming out, but it's coming out such a small hole and there's so much pressure behind it that it really does have a lot of cleaning force behind it when you're rubbing your hands under there We're trying to wash a spot out of something, okay? Insulating your attic, that was the recommendation that we got, actually. If you're looking at your windows and you're hearing those commercials for new windows, it's not usually your glass unless you're in a really older home. It's usually the insulation is missing from around the windows. So if you do have the ability to hire someone or your own do-it-yourself talent, you could actually kind of open your wall up a little bit and put that insulation around your windows, and that's going to make a big difference. This is going to sound really silly, but your outside electrical sockets, so these are the electrical outlets that are on the outside of the home, not the middle of the house. There's actually a breeze. If you were to hold a candle to one of those on a windy day, you would see the candle move. That air is coming through the wall and through that outlet. So you can buy a little kit. It's only a couple bucks. Home Depot, Menards, they sell them. And you can take apart that outlet with just a simple screwdriver, put the insulation in there and put it back together again. And now you're going to really reduce that energy that's coming, that you're losing. So hot water pipes, a lot of times people forget to put insulation around your hot water pipes. And that's really great because that hot water is going to stay hot longer. And you're going to lose so much if you're looking at an old water heater, that water's cooling off. And so you really want to keep it warm as long as possible, the pipes warm as long as possible. Otherwise, you're just wasting a lot of water running it to get the hot water. I'm sure you're all familiar with that when you're trying to take a shower. If you do have to replace your hot water tank, which a lot of those go bad within 10 years, you can consider going tankless. Okay, now we experimented that with my own house and we've had our ups and downs. We are on well water where we are, and it is a little harder with well water. They don't last quite as long, but I will tell you that we still love it. With teenagers here and everything else and the long showers, there's no fear because you don't run out of water. The other thing is you don't have to buy a 40 or a 50 gallon water tank that you're keeping the water hot all the time in. You literally don't have hot water when nobody's using it. So you turn it on, you wait for the pipe to warm up, and boom, you have your hot water because it's coming out hot. It's just taking a second as it cools off through the pipes. So if you still have a regular hot water tank, the Department of Energy recommends that you actually set it at 120. A lot of times the instructions on your hot water tank are going to tell you to set it at 140. Setting it at 120 also saves you energy, okay? And you don't necessarily burn your hands, or if you have kids in the house and you're worried about them, they're not going to burn their hands. So something to keep in mind, all of these things might sound minor, but I can tell you they add up. Just think of this, you use all of these things every single day, multiple times for your sink, your shower, if there's more than one person in the house. Okay, so it's a lot of little things, but they really do add up. This is just a little bit more if you have not got involved with the real-time pricing that you can do through ComEd, a little bit more information on it. Okay, you normally pay a fixed rate. And that fixed rate is, the amount you're paying per the kilowatt hours that you used, right? When you go to real-time pricing, it's going to vary that rate. And so right now I have lights on in the house. The refrigerator might go on, okay, and run, right? But by and large, the electricity is not really running a lot right now. Now, the power rate is lower at this point, it's after 7 o'clock in the evening, than it was at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and it's going to keep going down. So the more that I can run things late at night, in the wee hours of the morning, if you can do that, like I told you for the electric car powering, all of those things are going to come in at a lower rate. So when I added the electric car, we thought our rates would go up. Our amount of kilowatt hours that we're using has gone up. We put a 240 line in for that plug-in vehicle. But so when it's using energy, it's using a lot, but at the same time, it's only using it during the non-peak times. So I'm paying a lot less. So my energy bill in general has not changed dramatically. This makes a real difference in the summer too, because everybody's running their air conditioning. And you can imagine air conditioning, people are coming home from work and they're turning that air conditioning on or setting the thermostat a little lower because it's just so hot and they're used to the air conditioning at work maybe, whatever the case is. So everybody wants that cooler home. So even though a lot of your companies have stopped using electricity and drawing from the grid, a lot of your homes are drawing more power. So it's taking longer before those rates drop. But they do drop again at night. And so doing your laundry at night is going to save you some money. Running that dishwasher at night is going to save you money. So those are just things to keep in mind. There's a peak time rebate as well. There's a number of different programs. All of them are on their website. You can find out what's really going to work for you. One of the other programs is their AC cycling program. Now, this one is not for somebody who does the real-time pricing. So maybe that's not going to fit your lifestyle, okay? But maybe you could allow them to put an attachment on your air conditioning that will actually turn it down a few degrees during peak times. They're not going to do this all the time. It's only during peak times. And they'll actually give you a rebate for allowing them to do this, to adjust your air conditioning. Everybody I've ever talked to who's ever done this program, I don't do this one, but everybody I've talked to said they don't notice it at all. All right. So it's just a way for ComEd to reduce the load on the grid at the critical time in summer where they need to. Okay. And they won't do it to you on weekends and they don't do it to you on the 4th of July. So, so that's all good. The power strips I talked about. So these are just some examples in case you're not familiar with them. My favorite one is the kilowatt surge protector because it actually tells you how much electricity whatever you've plugged into it is using. You can get a kilowatt surge protector from the library, I'm pretty sure. There was a grant to the libraries about 10 years ago. So unless something happened, there should still be one at Yorkville Library. And no, it's not there. Ah, bummer. Well, you can buy one too, but it's really cool because I will tell you, once you go around the house and you plug your toaster and your microwave and all the different items, if you're still using a alarm clock radio thing instead of switching over to a cell phone, or even just wanting to know how much electricity your cell phone uses to recharge at night, you plug the kilowatt meter into your electric outlet, plug the item into the kilowatt meter, and then you can see how much electricity is drawn. And you can leave it in overnight if you were like charging your phone and find out how much electricity it drew during the night. And you can do the same thing with that toaster that you didn't use all night and find out whether it's one of those little vampires that's actually still pulling electricity for you. If you've got a coffee pot that's got a clock on it, it's most likely pulling electricity throughout the night just because it's got that clock. Now, a lot of the new ones have little LEDs and it's not using a lot of electricity, but it's just something to be aware of. So anyway, there's a smart power strip. You can actually program the smart power strip through your phone. You can use it to control different devices. It's really too high tech for me, I got to tell you. But if you're really into that stuff, it's really great. Certainly there's a whole variety of items out there, whether it's controlling your whole home and what lights go on and when, or just controlling a few things here and there. One thing I would like to just point out too is if you like to use a lot of lights in your yard, it's really good to do it carefully. Make sure that you're lighting up the things that you're trying to protect your home. So the police will often tell you that you want your door, you want windows to be lit up so that somebody doesn't sneak into your house. and try not to have big bushes blocking those areas, so it's easier for people to break in. You do not need to light up your whole yard. And so it does create light pollution that does disrupt the birds when they're migrating. I know it sounds like it wouldn't. And it's electricity that you're basically wasting shooting up into the sky. So if you do have outside lights, make sure that they're only lighting up just the area that you want to protect yourself with. And maybe even put them on a motion detector so that they're only going off when something is happening out there, or at least some of them are on motion, as another way to just reduce your overall energy use. And certainly use LED lights. They're very bright and they don't use very much power at all. So that's pretty much my spiel on the energy side of things. Did anybody have any energy questions before we move into the recycling side of life?
Marta, Gail had asked, what do you think of Michael Moore's movie saying we were misled about potential of renewable energy?
You know, I'm not familiar with that one. I have to look into it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have to know just a little bit more about the premise.
Yep, I have not seen that movie either. I am not sure.
We could certainly discuss it at the end if we want.
Okay. That was the only question so far in the chat.
All righty. Well, so with that, we're going to switch into buying intelligently. Now, we've already talked about some of the items that we want to look for Energy Star, and we want to look for water sense labels and buy those things as appliances and what have yous. But one of the topics that's a favorite for me is the fashion industry. Okay, so this was a question I posed to a bunch of my Facebook friends a few years ago, and the variety of answers was interesting, to say the least. And how many clothes do we need? I remember graduating college and I had this goal of 10 outfits that I could wear to work. And some of them were going to be mix and match, and some of them were going to be suits that were, that just hitting the right note and all of those good things, and that interview suit, what that had to be and all that stuff. But then how many pairs of jeans do we need? How many pairs of shorts? How many t-shirts do we really need? So there's so many items. And when they look at what people actually use, it actually is like a dozen items that we go to in our closet. And you can try this on your own afterwards. How many clothes do you use in a couple of weeks or in a month? How many different clothes? And then how many clothes sit in your closet or in your drawers and actually you hardly ever wear? You've actually forgotten that you even own them. And yet the next time we go on a trip, we're going to want to buy a souvenir t-shirt. That's 650 gallons of water that it took to make that t-shirt. So the next time we go on a 5K run, we want to get that t-shirt showing we did the 5K run. We might have 30 of those in the drawer, but we want that one. And that's 650 gallons of water to grow the cotton to make the t-shirt. Okay, and let's hope it's a cotton t-shirt, because if it's a plastic polyester t-shirt, well, now we're getting microplastics, because every time we're drying it, we're getting stuff into our dryer vent that we clean, and some of that stuff is microplastic. Not all of it's cotton that's coming off of our clothes. Years ago, before I knew about microplastics, I used to compost all of those materials out of my dryer lint. And I stopped when I learned, because all I'm doing is putting microplastics out into the environment. And I'd rather send those to the landfill, unfortunately. So it just, again, questioning how much we really do need. And obviously we do need new clothes occasionally, or something special to wear. So what could we do besides always buying something new? Well, we could look at consignment shops, which are packed with beautiful things. My daughter went to both of her proms in used prom dresses. She refused to buy brand new prom dresses. And that was a group of schools, Yorkville and Sandwich and several other of the school districts joined together, and they offered this sale each year. And that's what she shopped. Now, we did have to have them altered, but still, overall, we saved money. And we knew that she was reusing a dress that otherwise probably nobody would wear again. So it's certainly possible for all of our special occasions to find things without necessarily going out and buying them brand new. Okay. And when you do buy a suit, buying a good suit, something that has classic style, it's not just something that's in right now, and something that you can dry clean and keep for a very long time. So when you do wash your clothes in cold water, not just to save the energy, which automatically will save money, save energy, but also that keeps your blacks dark, all your colors, it's holding in better. Okay, it's not going to make your stains necessarily stay in. So if it gets done with the wash and you see that the stain didn't come out, you can still treat it again. Once you wash in hot, that becomes a lot less likely. So really do recommend washing in cold. All the detergent brands nowadays tell you that you can use cold water to wash in. Okay. Now, when you're buying products, you need to keep in mind that some of them are actually literally being designed to go obsolete. Right. So computers are one of my favorite. I have a laptop that I swear is on its last legs. I'm using a work laptop right now to do this presentation. I don't know that my actual old laptop could handle it. My old, $800 laptop that's I think 5 years old. I don't think it can handle it. So it's crazy. That's and then that just means I have to go out and spend another $800 or $1,000 for this, the same device. Why isn't the one I have working at the speed it needs to work at? It certainly isn't because it's doing anything it wasn't already designed to do, but the things just break down. Our microwaves. My mother had a microwave that she got in the 1980s that lasted her for over 20 years. Okay, I remember being very excited back in like 1979 or 80 when she got that microwave. Lasted forever. I haven't had a microwave make it 10 years for me. So, designing them to actually go bad. Our TVs. Okay, we all love the flat screen TVs. All right, they're LEDs, so they've become more energy efficient. But at the same time, the old TVs, the big hunkin' ones, they used to last 30 years. Our flat screen TVs are lucky to make it 7. Anything hits them, okay, unlike the other ones that could pretty much take a baseball bat and hit it and nothing would happen. You bump into the darn thing, you're going to lose some pixels in your screen. So again, being really cognizant of what you're buying. Look for brands that are reliable, look for warranties that are long. Then you know that the manufacturer really did take their time and put something decent together for you. All right. And whenever possible, avoid single-use items. Avoid things that are not repairable. If you've ever come across some of the electronic devices out there that have a battery that's actually embedded in it and you cannot get to that battery, you can't replace it. Once the battery dies, that's the end of the product. Avoid those. Do not get those. Speaking as somebody who recycles electronics, I can tell you they're dangerous for our electronics recyclers because they have to take them apart physically by hand before they can put those things into any kind of shredding equipment because the batteries can create fires. If you really want to learn a lot more about this whole topic, I recommend Annie Leonard. She wrote Use Less Stuff. She has a website, she has videos, and she has one video specifically devoted to planned and perceived obsolescence. Okay. And that's more like when we just think, our car isn't as new as our neighbors. So we're going to have to run out and get a newer one. Okay. And perceived obsolescence. Maybe getting in the habit of shopping garage sales once things start to reopen. I think we'll have more of those again. certainly, from everything I've read, Facebook Marketplace has been the go-to for people during the pandemic, getting rid of some things that they don't want anymore. Everybody's been cleaning out things because they were stuck at home. Shopping at thrift stores, okay? And it's not just about the clothes, okay? There are a lot of items there. One of the things I did years ago was we have an annual party where we have about 30 people over for one of the holidays, all relatives for the most part, friends. And of course, I didn't have enough utensils. So I went and I bought some utensils. None of them match, all right? But what does that matter? That's way better than using single-use plastic, right? Borrowing things from friends, neighbors, family members, okay? Return it in good condition and you won't have any impact on that relationship. If it needs fuel, refuel it, okay? Maybe wash it off or something. But yeah, as long as you're returning it in good condition, people will loan you things, and you can loan things to people too. Renting, it's always a better alternative than buying if it's something that you think you're only going to need for one project. Why are you investing all this money in this tool and then it just sits there taking up space in your garage or your storeroom, your basement? Okay, sharing items whenever possible. Okay, so all of those things are really great ways to reduce the number of items that we're purchasing and then just storing. Right, in your yard, be sure you leave your grass clippings on the lawn. If you wait, in the summertime when we're getting a little later, when we get a lot of rain and you don't keep up with the lawn fast enough, you're like, oh, this is too much grass, right? Well, then start a compost, okay? And throw your food scraps in there, your potato peels, your apple cores, your orange peels, all of those things can go in there. You're gonna make a mulch out of that. And you can take that and fertilize your gardens, your bushes, your trees, anywhere in your yard, right? So it's a great inexpensive way for you to handle your materials in your yard. And then also support people who compost in the area. So be sure to buy compost from stores when you're trying to it's a natural fertilizer. It's rich in nutrients. A lot of our composting sites are starting to take food scraps, but even when they're not, they're still a very good fertilizer. So make sure you're utilizing those. So it's my fast fashion photo there for you. So I talk over here about changing the paradigm, right? So from the idea of showing off new clothes, right? You often had conversations with somebody and they want to tell you about their new designer item that they got, that kind of thing, right? Well, how about we shift that paradigm into, would you believe that this shirt's 20 years old, or my favorite line from a meme on Facebook would be, oh, look, I can fit into the same thing I wore in high school, my earrings. Okay. So, but showing that off, right? And making sure people understand how valuable it is to have something that's long lasting, a really good purse. Come on, these things can last 20, 30 years. And really, you can take it to a shoe shine place if it's leather, and they'll have it just looking like it's brand new for you in no time. So you can refurbish these things and keep them a very long time. And just avoiding disposables. So in this picture, you see the cup from the coffee shop in her hand. Well, wouldn't it be better if she was using a reusable, refillable cup? And there's actually legislation right now that they're trying to push against single-use plastic. The city of Chicago's got an ordinance that they're trying to pass, and they tried to get it in Springfield this year. I don't think it'll pass this year, quite honestly, but I think if Chicago gets it passed, that's going to set us on track to possibly pass it statewide. And that's basically giving you the right as a consumer to say, I want to refill my cup. Okay, and then places have to allow you to do that. So on to the recycling and doing it right. So, recycling has been around for quite a long time. And certainly we could talk about it all the way back to World War II when there were rubber drives and paper drives and all kinds of drives for materials. But our curbside program is really what we're going to talk about here. And that is in the 1990s, when a lot of the curbside programs started, there were some items that could be recycled and taken in those programs. And then there were a lot of items that could not. We were all given little tiny bins that that let all the materials blow. Was the craziest thing when we think about it in retrospect. But because there were so few items we could take, nobody really felt like you needed to have a big cart for your recycling. So you had these little bins, and most of us were getting at least one daily newspaper. Some places were getting three. Maybe you were into the Wall Street Journal, or you wanted the Chicago Tribune along with the Record. So whatever it is that you were getting, okay, a lot of that's disappeared today, okay. But that was the main thing that went in. That was paper made up a huge portion, and glass. Glass in the 1990s, we still had a lot of our products in glass containers. So now we get to the 2000s and we switch over to these single stream carts. And it was wonderful because people who had never recycled, who felt recycling was too complicated, okay, they started to recycle because now you could mix everything into this one cart, okay? But the change that really happened that's important to remember is that when we had those little bins, the driver had to get out of the truck, he had to lift that little bin, see what was in it, and then put it into the truck. And if he saw that you had put stuff in there that you weren't supposed to put in there, okay, he gave it back to you. He let it sit there, right? He might have put an oops tag on it, but for the most part, he just let it sit there. And then you got to call and say, hey, you didn't take it. And they were like, well, you know, or even better yet, in some cases back then, the driver would actually take out the things he could recycle and let you have the bin back with just the stuff he couldn't. Really educational, okay? Really educational. Now with this automated system that the carts have, we see all the metal bars that are on there. Okay, the arm comes out, picks that cart up, dumps it. The driver is not getting out of the truck. It's really good for worker injuries, okay? We don't have that bending over, lifting that bin, that kind of thing going on anymore, which was causing a lot of back injuries, frankly, okay? So now we got away from that, but we also got away from educating everybody. They don't see the things that you're putting in there that you're not supposed to. If they do at all, it's on a camera that they can see while they're already dumping it, and it's just falling into the truck already, so they can't give it back to you. There's no education taking place. And the saddest part about this is if you go back to the 90s, there were a lot of folks that had people on the municipal level who were out there trying to make sure people really were learning this. The garbage and recycling companies were really trying to send you materials and tell you about this. When we made this switch in the 2000s, it was almost like education was taken for granted. The cities didn't have people that did this kind of stuff. The counties didn't have a lot of money to educate on this kind of stuff, and the haulers stopped educating, even with written materials. So you had less information be given to consumers. You had no education at the curb with returns. And what that has done is increased contamination. So for many years, we were reliant, along with the rest of the world, on China taking our recyclables. They took a good deal of our paper. They took a lot of our plastic, right? And as we kept making our loads more and more contaminated, they started to get a little irritated because the folks there were literally going through this stuff and trying to mine it for useful materials. And this is how a lot of people were making their living. Their standards for safety are different than the US. So, excuse me, in 2013, they basically told the whole industry that they really had to clean up their act. And it pretty much turned into a blip. For about a year, there was an effort, there were some markets that were getting blocked, things like that. And the MRFs were trying to do a little bit better, but by and large, a lot of things were getting skirted. And so the contamination continued. Then in 2017, they announced that they were putting what they called the green sword into place. And they pretty much said from now on, China will recycle its own recyclables, and only if you pass the strictest standards for what you send us will we accept your materials. Okay, and not just here, This is across the globe, everybody. So what happened was that plastics that we were always told were recyclable, well, a lot of them did not have domestic recycling. So we're relying now so much more on markets in North America. And what that did was that really changed the contamination rate. So to give you an idea, that old bin that I started off this story with, a lot of times there was still contamination at the material recovery facilities. It was around 3%. And then with the carts, it went up to 10%. Even in well-educated communities, it was 10%. Okay. But with this new standard from China, all of these different materials that we thought we could recycle that we couldn't domestically recycle, we couldn't market, the contamination rate has been between 25 and 40% since 2018. Okay. And that is causing a lot of issues for our material recovery facilities, for the profits that they rely on in order to keep operational. It's resulted in a lot of communities seeing an increased cost for services. Okay. The most common contaminant that people put into their carts is plastic bags. Plastic bags can be recycled. Jewel never stopped accepting plastic bags throughout the entire pandemic. Okay, a lot of other stores stopped. Jewel never stopped taking them. They have never, ever been recyclable in your curbside program. And yet, people put their recyclables in a plastic bag and put it out into that cart. And when that plastic bag goes across these conveyor belts that they're huge sorting conveyor belts here, they get caught on them and twisted. And 3 times a day minimum, can be way more. They have to shut the system down completely and have people climb in there and use knives to cut this plastic off of these gears in order to keep our recyclables moving. So it's a safety hazard and it's a cost to our recycling. It's really important we keep plastic bags out. Okay. Other things that people like to think are recyclable are scrap metal. So yes, we do take aluminum cans. We take aluminum foil. We take steel tin cans. Okay. We don't take pots and pans, right? We don't take the chain that you don't want anymore. All right. But people are throwing all of these different materials in thinking that they're recyclable. Okay. And they are at a scrapyard. You can take all those things I just mentioned to a scrapyard. They're happy to recycle them for you, but you can't put them in the curbside bin. Okay. Plastics. People think all plastics are equal. I went to one of my recycling drop-offs in Will County and I saw one of those playthings that the kids use, the toddlers use, the big plastic fort that you can make for the kids, taken apart and put in to the recycling dumpster, like somehow the material recovery facility, who's used to doing small plastic containers, 2-liter bottles, laundry bottles, could somehow do this massive thing that the kids play in. I mean, it's just, not all plastic is the same. So, and worse yet, we used to say you could do all the clam shells that were number 1s. They used to be number 6s. Not anymore. They're telling us that that's considered a contaminant in their bale, even when it's a number 1. Okay. Batteries. I told you about how the embedded batteries cause problems. Well, people also understand that they can recycle batteries. Yes, at a battery collection area. Okay, but not in your curbside bin, but people will toss batteries in there. And those can cause fires in the garbage truck. They can cause fires in the sorting facility. It is a serious concern. Electronics. We know that they're banned from the landfill, a lot of them in Illinois. There are special drop-offs, special collections for them. You can't throw your cell phone or your clock radio or your computer into the recycling cart, okay? It's gonna cause a problem. It's not where they're recyclable at, all right? And then food, just this yuck factor of food. So I really stress it for the plastic. If you have a peanut butter jar with some peanut butter still left in it, take a napkin, take your, I'm not suggesting you waste a lot of water on this. Please don't turn this into like the washing uh, um, frenzy, but your sponge and wipe it out, okay? Just a nice little wipe and then put it in. Plastics melt at a very low temperature, and food contamination is a serious concern for them. Now, if you have a glass jelly jar and it's got some jelly still stuck inside of it, I can tell you that yes, the message is I'd still like you to wipe that out. But a glass jar and a steel can, okay, that it might have had refried beans in it or something that's stuck to it, okay, they're gonna go into a 3,000 degree furnace. Plastics can melt in your oven, okay, way different. So that food residue is gonna burn off in the 3,000 degree furnace. So I don't want you wasting a lot of water washing things, but if you can get in a habit of just doing a little wipe to them, that's going to help the material recovery facility out a lot. Okay. Please keep in mind that companies are causing confusion on this all the time. I hate to pick on Chipotle because I kind of like them. I like their food. Okay. I like their message and organics and all that great stuff. But I got to tell you, you walk in there and they have a garbage container and it says recycle. Why does their garbage container say recycle? Nothing I'm putting in there is going to be recycled. It's going to all go to the landfill. Yes, that aluminum foil that they use, I could technically recycle that. But that paper tray that they put their burrito in or whatever it is, right? That could be composted, but it can't be recycled. Okay, it's not suitable for paper recycling. So I really, they're confusing. K-Cup came out and they said, we ran tests and our K-Cups recyclable. Okay, feel okay about using K-Cups. Please don't feel okay about that. They are not. For them to be recyclable, a material recovery facility would have to set up its own separate line. They would have to have a sorting machine, okay, that would actually look specifically for K-Cups. And then they would have to have a special place on that sorting line to drop the K-Cups off to. Then they would have to have a tractor trailer load of K-Cups that they could then send to the place that could actually recycle the K-Cups. And you can imagine that none of the material recovery facilities anywhere in the United States are willing to invest all the money that would take to do. All right, nobody's going to do it. So yeah, they're plastic, but they're a single-use plastic that's destined for the landfill. All right, and they're not going to get recycled. So yeah, just avoid them if you can. All right, and then just to make confusion worse, if I talk to the material recovery facility, which is what you see in this picture, okay, these are the guys who actually are sorting the materials. They're going to tell me one story about what they can take, okay, what items they can accept, all right? But if I go from one of these recovery facilities to another recovery facility, that story is going to change. And the reason that story is going to change is both of those separate companies are marketing their materials to different manufacturers. And so they're going by what their manufacturer tells them are the rules. And that's why they're going to differ. And then, to make matters worse, your local waste hauler may or may not be up to speed. So right now, for 10 years, we have told people to keep caps on their plastic bottles. Prior to 10 years ago, the message was always take the caps off, okay? I can get a brand new printed brochure from some of the haulers that will still tell me to leave the caps off. But I can tell you that there isn't anybody out there who recycles plastic bottles who's saying that they need to have the caps off. They can handle them. So it's just confusing and it's unfortunate. All right. But the bottom line is it's also exciting because it means that they're always innovating. And that means there's always discrepancies that we just have to overcome. So because of China and this whole change in the contamination rate, there is an educational effort that's been in place since 2018 when the Illinois EPA convened a statewide task force on contamination. All right, and that contamination task force still exists. We haven't been meeting recently, but we invited every single one of those material recovery facilities to participate in this. We invited all the counties that have recycling coordinators. We invited a whole bunch of people, haulers, everybody that we could think of that really would have a hand in this. And we sat around for that whole first year meeting and bringing up different items and saying, what's the deal with this item? And we were originally going to make a list of all the items that were recyclable across the state of Illinois. And we ended up coming to the conclusion that we really needed to make a list of all the items that absolutely nobody can take at a MRF. And that was something we could all agree on far easily, more easily than we could agree on what everybody could take. Okay. And something as simple as glass. Some of our material recovery facilities take it. Some of our material recovery facilities don't want glass. So, you know, it's crazy, unfortunately. But we're lucky here. We have good markets in the Chicagoland area, and we can recycle a lot of stuff. This poster that you see, it was designed based on all of those meetings. And we've been putting it around the state. It's on the state website. In fact, the state of EPA developed a whole new website. I have that link at the bottom of this. You can go and you can see what do you do, not just no plastic bags, but where can you take the plastic bags to, that kind of stuff. So they really, really did try to capture as many of the materials as we talked about in that contamination task force on this one website. It's actually really nice. And I do highly recommend you visit it for your questions on recycling from time to time. The only other thing that I really want to point out is you'll hear glass, negative items about glass, and you'll hear that there's no markets for it and that kind of stuff. We just did at the Illinois Recycling Foundation a webinar with glass recyclers. We had the MRFs that take glass, MRFs that don't take glass, and the actual glass industry all represented. And we have markets for glass here in Illinois, great markets for glass in Illinois. Most of the glass that they're processing is coming out of Michigan, a bottle bill state. It's actually not coming from our own facilities, our own homes and businesses. And that's simply because some of our companies that we rely on for service own landfills. Glass is a heavy material, which means it's costly to put in the landfill. And so if it's contaminated and not cleaned up enough at that material recovery facility, then they're left with sending it to the landfill. And so that's another arm of that business that actually makes money then from the material that the facility can't recycle. So the material recovery facilities that don't have any ties to landfills, they tend to invest millions of dollars in sorting that glass properly and getting it to market. So I just share that with you in case anybody ever tells you that glass doesn't have any markets or they're not good markets. That's not true. And we need to make sure that we're pushing to that all of our material recovery facilities invest the money they need to do glass sorting. So that's my soapbox, because it's just one of those wonderful basic materials that we should be doing. So I just wanted to share with you, because I feel like I depress people when I tell them all the bad things that are going on with recycling. Recycling makes a real difference. It makes an impact on climate change. Okay, recycling steel cans, recycling glass, recycling paper, all of these things make such an enormous difference. And what we can do to help is try to avoid overpackaged items. Okay, ask stores to provide items in a recyclable package or in a compostable package. Take items to drop-off locations that are not accepted in the curbside programs. Okay, tell family, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors, write a letter to the newspaper. I mean, seriously, post it on social media. But there is people just they take recycling for granted to a certain point, which is great in one respect, but they're doing it wrong, and that hurts us. And so if you contaminate a good recyclable item and that item ends up going to the landfill, we're kind of missing the whole point. So we want to do it right. Okay. When you see a brand that you really like and you think that they could do something to improve, use their 800 number, contact them through their website, let them know that you care about this. We've made tremendous changes with corporations through our own action, and they need to know that their actual patrons want them to change. So like I already mentioned, wiping out the plastic bottles in the tubs, pouring out beverages, leaving the caps on the plastic bottles. Okay, so there's just simple things that we can do that make a big difference. Again, that's a recurring theme I have. And then the last thing that I really want to touch on is this move towards a circular economy and EPR. So we have existed pretty much since the beginning of time in a linear cycle, the human race, where we take resources, whether we're cutting down trees or we're mining those materials, and then we produce a product out of it. We use the product, and then we discard the product. Okay, now there have been times where it was just so difficult for us, that we would reuse things a lot more than we used to. But since the Industrial Revolution, that really hasn't been the case for us. We tend to just waste things. All right, and we need to get more circular in our approach. Okay, so not having to mine or extract as many of our materials, okay, making use of these materials as long as possible, that durability idea, repairing them, okay, reusing them, finding other purposes for them. A lot of times you'll see contests for kids to make a craft out of a recycled product in honor of Earth Day. Okay, maybe they'll turn a 2-liter plastic bottle into a birdhouse. I would tell you, as somebody in the industry, I don't want to see the kids use the 2-liter plastic bottle. I have a market for that. I would love to see them use that plastic that you can't recycle and do something really cool, crafty with that. Okay, something that you have nothing else you could do. That's the item to try and do something different with. All right. And then certainly recycling fits into that. And getting to this point of zero waste. It's a goal. It's an amazing goal. And there are some areas of our country that are really making strides for that. To get there, we have to be doing our organics. All right. So all of those food scraps I was talking about, as well as, the grass clippings and that kind of stuff. But it is getting up to 85 and 90% in certain small cities that are really, really pushing this. Okay. It takes a lot of effort to get there, but it can be done. And then always, of course, you have to have markets for the materials you're collecting. The extended producer responsibility kind of hits on this a lot. That's the EPR. So we have a law in Illinois on electronics that actually is an EPR bill. And what that means is the manufacturers have to pay the cost of recycling. Vermont, they have a law that says that the battery manufacturers have to pay for battery recycling, all the batteries, the single-use batteries and the rechargeable batteries. And in Canada, they have that same law on the batteries. So we need to move in that direction. There are several pieces of legislation right now this year in the sessions, the carpet stewardship bill, which would put a few cents that we'd all pay whenever we buy new carpeting, okay, on each square yard of carpet. But that's going to then result in the cost of the nylon and the PET and even wool carpeting being recycled at the end of life. So that's something that you can have it sent back to wherever you bought it from, or you might be able to do it through a construction and demolition recycler. Okay, there's a proposed paint stewardship bill, And that is pretty much consumers paying about 75 cents for each gallon of paint they buy. And that would then cover a recycling program for the paint through the paint manufacturers. There is also a pharmaceutical take back bill that's been introduced. And right now, the Illinois EPA spends $1 million on a pharmaceutical take back program throughout the state of Illinois that police departments and some pharmacies take part in. Now, most of the pharmacies that you see this in are doing it voluntarily. The problem with voluntary is they can stop doing it at any time. But now we're trying to get our pharmaceutical manufacturers to actually cover the cost of both collection and disposal. And so that's what this is. And that would be a lot like the electronics bill, that there is no additional cost to the consumer on this one. That's all going to be buried in because we figure the pharmaceutical companies seem to be making a profit. So I don't know. That's our thought. Like the electronics recycler manufacturers, we think they tend to make money on us too. So in the future, I do think there's going to be more anaerobic digestion systems being put in the high food places that manufacture food and places that serve a lot of food. There's been an experiment with them in a hotel in Chicago. There's one in Joliet at the Joliet Junior College. They have a program for, I forgot what it's called, where they teach cooks. Culinary school, there we go, came back to me. And so they actually have an anaerobic digester, a small one in there for the students to learn. So it's something that you can recover the food from instead of throwing it to the landfill. Break it down, turn it into a compost. And some of the bigger systems will actually capture the gas and turn it into energy. So really exciting field. Recycling, sorting, and processing is always innovating. They have optical sorters that can tell the colors of the glass. They can tell the different resins that the plastics are made out of. There's just a lot of sorters to put on a line, but they have the technology and they're always improving on it. And then this EPR that we were just talking about, it involves the manufacturers. They have skin in the game now. If they have to pay for the end of life recycling, maybe they'll design their products to be friendlier at the end of life, to be more reusable, to be able to repair them, okay, that kind of stuff. And the other thing that we have to look forward to is more and more corporations every day are implementing sustainability initiatives. They've taken it, shareholders have spoken up and said that this is important to them. Okay, so just keep in mind you have a voice and you can be heard and you can make a difference, not just at home, but even, you know, in the big scheme of things. That's it for me. I can stop sharing if you'd like.
Okay. Let's see. There was a couple questions that were asked. Someone asked if we were recording this presentation. And yes, we are recording it, and I will be sharing it with you all tomorrow. I will share the link along with our program evaluation. So look for that in your email. And someone else asked, Marta, can the lids on the jars be recycled?
Yes. So if you get in the habit of putting the lid back on, that's great. But you don't have to put the metal lids back onto the jars. So that they will get sorted because they're bigger. But the plastic caps are so small that they'll fall through the grading systems in the sorting equipment. So that's why they say to put the caps back on. But yeah, it's not going to make a difference if the metal lid is on. So I always err on the side of a habit.
So many things I'm learning. Learning to wash my clothes before I go to bed and my dishes. That was a really good tip.
Good.
If anybody has any other questions, I've unmuted everyone, so please feel free to ask.
Marta, this is Gene Wilberg. I've been in the consumer products business for about 40 years. And I just want to underline a point that you made about the power that consumers have in selecting what companies they want to do business with, what products they want to buy, all those things. I think people think, well, I just buy a little bit of stuff. But if a lot of people are using that voice, and what they say to the companies, what they buy, that voice is being heard. And more companies are realizing they've got to listen to that voice and respond to that voice, much more so than even 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever. So I'm just encouraging and underlining what you're saying. We do have a powerful voice. Be careful who you do business with, be careful what you buy, and then in addition, do all the things you're saying once you've purchased something. So good job. Thank you.
Thanks. Good to hear.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So how do we shift like the mindset to recycle properly? Like I know my neighbors don't recycle for some reason, and I kind of want to like ask them, and I want to like convince them to recycle, you know? But does it make a difference if they don't know how to do it properly rather than not doing it at all? So I just wanted to hear your take on it.
So it's usually trying to listen to a person to figure out what they really care about. I've had people that were not the best recyclers who really cared about organic gardening. They were passionate about organic gardening. And when you started to talk to them about composting and recycling in relationship to that love of the organic gardening, they started to find that recycling was something that was more important to them. And there's so many different ways that you can reach people. Somebody who cares about their health, and you talk to them about how an electric vehicle doesn't produce the air pollution of a petroleum-based vehicle, that suddenly they didn't think of themselves as really worrying about that kind of a thing, but now all of a sudden they see the value of maybe producing cleaner air. And then when you talk about recycling, and you talk about how you actually are reducing the amount of air pollution because you're not mining the materials and then transporting the materials thousands of miles around the globe, that helps convince somebody. The very first thing I would say you want to do is just try and get to know them a little bit, find out what it is that is important to them.
Okay, thank you. And then another question I have is I'm starting to I want to do a home composting, but I don't know where to start. I don't know like the basics of composting. Do you have any recommendations where I can go? I tried online and some are like you build your own. They're really complicated. And I don't want for beginners. I just want a beginner compost. I don't know if I should go buy one or I don't know.
I'll tell you my first compost, I lived in a townhouse and I didn't want my neighbors to get all weirded out. You know how a lot of those are, people can see everything you do. So I took a milk crate and I buried it partially in the yard and I put a lawn decoration over it. And then I would throw my food scraps and a little bit of grass clippings that I would throw in there, that kind of stuff. And then some mulch because it's 2/3 brown, 1/3 green. So that's the easiest rule of thumb I can tell you, but you can start it off as small as you want to. We're having at Will County a webinar tomorrow at 1 p.m. that's free to join. And you can register through willcountygreen.com for that. Our environmental educator is actually leading that. Also on our website, we have information on composting. I'm sure Shelley can tell you at the library, they probably have plenty of books about how to start a compost. There's certainly a lot, but the easiest rule of thumb is 2/3 brown. Brown is your brush chips, and 1/3 green. Green is your food scraps and your grass clippings. and just mixing it up in a little pile. It doesn't have to be formal, but you do need to be cognizant of your neighbors.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Sure.
And then one more question. How, I know you mentioned batteries, recycling batteries. I didn't catch it. How, is there a place that we take batteries?
So rechargeable batteries, I haven't checked recently. Ace Hardware used to take the rechargeable batteries, but I haven't checked in with them if they're still doing that. So that's the most local. Batteries Plus and Interstate Batteries advertise that they will take back all batteries. There's an Interstate Batteries location in Plainfield. That's the closest one I know of. But they might have a limit on how many single-use batteries they'll take. I often find people with a lot of single-use batteries when they call me. I have a coffee tin of 50 of these things. Okay, yeah. So we don't take single-use batteries back at our household hazardous waste collections anymore. We used to take the button batteries, but they haven't had any mercury in them in over 10 years. If not longer. And the only ones that are still kind of an issue, and we will allow them, are lithium batteries. So lithium batteries come in both rechargeable and single-use forms. And the lithium batteries, because they're the newest technology, seem to still have a little bit of issues with them. And the Department of Transportation requires that you put a piece of tape on the end of them before you transport them, because if two of them have any charge left in them and they hit each other the right way, they can actually heat up, which is what starts a fire as well. Rechargeable batteries are not allowed to go to the landfill. They are required to be recycled. And nowadays everybody's got rechargeables in their cell phones and power tools and what have you. So we do try to remind people about that. And the other place I would tell you is the Household Hazardous Waste Facility in Naperville. That's one of 4 regional household hazardous waste sites in the state of Illinois. The Illinois EPA picks up the cost on the disposal of the materials. They will take rechargeable batteries there.
That's a good question. Everybody has all those batteries. Are there any more questions for Marta tonight? Yes, Jean.
One more, Marta. I'm involved in marketing beverages that are sold in drink boxes. The drink boxes, I mean, that's one, people call them that, Tetra Packs, whatever you want to call them. Do they require any specialized treatment for a proper recycling?
Yes. So
Are you
Tetra
familiar
Pak
with
is
these?
one of, pardon?
No, go
Well,
right ahead. You know what I'm talking about. Tetra Pak, go ahead.
Tetra Pak is one of the few companies that did not say their product was recyclable till they had gone around the nation and established through a series of some grants and just collaboration, material recovery facilities that could handle those items. So when they're truly recyclable, there's a separate sorting line. The way I talked about the K-cups, they actually will sort them all separate from everything else. And when they have a truckload, they send them off, and they have equipment that will actually shred those, recovering the metal layer that's in there, recovering the paper. They have a way to market all of those materials. There was a program I saw, not in our country, so I can't say this is happening in our country. It was in South America, but they were making them into furniture, some of the materials from those packages. So the Tetra Pak is actually one of my more favorite stories when it comes to a new package. It's lighter weight. It allows things to stay on a shelf rather than be refrigerated. Right. And they made sure that they could recycle it at the end of life. Now, I say all that, and I will tell you that there are material recovery facilities that didn't want to invest the money in the extra line. And so they will take them and they will try to market them with their paper. And some paper mills will accept it and deal with it, and other paper mills consider it a contaminant. So I'm not going to promise you all of those packages actually get recycled, but certainly the manufacturer has made great strides and still today offers grants and tries to work with different companies around the country, MRFs, to make sure that they do get recycled.
Real quick, on the bottom of this drink box, there's a stamp that says mixed board, FSC. FSC, is that something that tells you something about this material? Mixed board, FSC? No?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't remember.
That's fine. That's fine.
There's an initial that tells you that something's from a renewable something is from a forest that they're replanting. And I don't know if that's that or not. It's escaping me at the moment. I apologize.
That's fine. You've helped me with my question. Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Okay, well, again, thank you, Marta. This was very, very, very informative, and I'm glad we could share this evening together on Earth Day.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure, really.
All right, well, have a good evening, everyone. And
Marta, be careful. You've got a cat right behind your head.
She was so good. So good.
Very, very
Our
quiet
calico.
Yeah. All right, everyone, have a good night. We will see you. Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.